Calling all authors, the Your Book, Your Voice podcast with host Robert A. Lane features everything you need to know about narrating your audiobook, but it doesn't stop there. We have special guests lined up from all aspects of the book publishing industry, and we also dive deep into what it takes to be mentally prepared for success as an author and in life. So please welcome your host, Robert A. Lane.
Hey, my friends, welcome to the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. I'm your host, Robert A. Lane. I'm an audiobook coach and producer specializing in helping nonfiction authors turn their awesome book into an audiobook. We got to get that book into an audiobook because you, as the nonfiction author, are really the only person who can express that book, tell that story the way you intended it to be heard in your own voice. So with that, we talk about the audiobook world. The other things that we do on the show, as well as bring on authors, is also talk with book professionals. And today's show is really great because we have a fantastic guest who's going to share some incredible information about neuro-marketing and who is also a best-selling author. We're going to talk about his books as well. So I don't want to waste any more time. I just want to get our guest on the show here. So let's welcome Mr. Vince Warnock, who is, again, a neuro-marketing coach, best-selling author. You've received some incredible accolades for your work. I know that Adobe recognized you. They have something called the Fearless 50. Can you tell us about that? I'm just curious to get a little more information about that.
Yeah, hey Robert. Honestly, it's still surreal even to this day, and that was back in I think 2018. So basically, I got a call from Adobe saying, "Hey, we want you to speak at a summit, this conference in San Francisco." And I'm like, "Yeah, of course, I'll do that." They're like, "Yeah, but we need you to come." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll do that. I'll be there." And they're like, "Yeah, but we'll fly you business class from New Zealand to San Francisco." And I'm like, well, I mean, twist my arm, but I'm going to be there. Like, yeah, do it. 5-star hotel, I'll be there. What I didn't realize is the reason they were putting pressure on me to get there was they had handpicked all of the 25 keynotes over the 5 days. And this was a really big deal for them because they were announcing the top 50 marketers in the world. And I was in the top 25. So the first 25 of that. And I can tell you now, it's huge, humbling honor. Like, honestly, I still can't believe to this day that I got recognized like that. And I'm still getting accolades today for various different things. But it was also incredible imposter syndrome. I was standing on stage with all of my heroes in the industry just going, I don't belong here. Like, I always talk about imposter syndrome sitting on your shoulder whispering, but my mind was screaming at me going, get off the stage. You don't belong here. So in fact, I'm so glad it wasn't filmed, man. They kind of had us all on stage, and the head of Adobe came out and said, hey, these are the top 25 marketers, blah, blah, blah. And I looked, and one of the ushers was trying to signal to me. So I so thought he meant, get off the stage. You're not one of the 25. That was what was going through my head. But actually, he was trying to usher me to the front of the stage. So if they ever filmed it, you would see me bobbing in and out of other people on stage, just moving around so the usher couldn't see me because I thought they were going to drag me off the stage. But in the end, they wanted him to interview me in front of everyone. So very humbling experience. I still pinch myself even today that I've had that kind of honor, and yeah, very grateful for it.
Yeah, that's really awesome, and it's so great to be able to get some recognition, because we as entrepreneurs, we work really hard. Entrepreneurship is not an easy road to take, and it's challenging. It's challenging, and we have our ups and downs. When we have our ups, they're really high, and when we have our lows, boy, we're like ready to throw in the towel. But that's just the way it is.
I love that. Every time someone comes to me and says, "I want to be an entrepreneur," I feel like I've got to explain that roller coaster to them. But the first thing I say to them is, okay, question for you. They go, what? Are you insane? Because if the answer to that is yes, you may be an entrepreneur. If the answer to that is no, go get a real job.
Yeah, because it does do work on that psyche.
Oh yeah.
So before we dive into you as a neuro-marketing coach, because that's a fascinating. It's a fascinating title. Some people may not even understand what that is. We're going to dive into that in just a bit. But let's get a little bit of your backstory, Vince. So tell us, what was it like growing up? And can you take us on a journey of how did you get to doing what you're doing with marketing nowadays? What was that journey?
I was going to say, I feel like I should start with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But so, now look, we talk about roller coasters. This is not so much a roller coaster journey, but warning and trigger warning for anyone who's grown up in abuse. That's part of my backstory there. So I grew up in a very abusive home. Father was a drug addict, mum was an alcoholic, and this was just the reality of what I had to grow up in. So home was not a safe place for me. Home was not somewhere where I ever had a voice, because if you stood out in amongst, all my siblings, we had 5 sisters and a brother and myself. Most are adopted and fostered into that family. And if you stood out, you were a target. So you really didn't have a voice there. School was my happy place. That was where I could be myself and let my weird extroverted ADHD brain out of its cage and annoy every teacher there. So that was kind of what I had to grow up in. Now, bearing in mind, by the way, that sounds terrible, and it is terrible. No one should ever go through that. But I also grew up in a neighborhood where everybody around me was pretty much the same story. And most of my friends grew up in those kind of homes as well. That's one of the darkest sides of New Zealand that we don't really talk about. So fast forward now to age 11, very pivotal moment for me. Actually, a quick stop of age 7 there, because with ADHD, I genuinely struggled to read and write when I was at school. When I looked at a page of text, my brain would struggle to basically process that text. So to look at, especially if there was a lot of information on there, my brain would just go, nah, this is too much, man. Look out the window. So I couldn't read or write properly to start with. And that caused one of my amazing teachers, I say sarcastically, to basically diagnose me. And she said, well, because they hadn't invented ADHD back then. So her diagnosis was simple. You're never going to read or write properly, Vince. You're retarded. And back in the 70s, that was apparently acceptable to say to a child. I'm very glad things have changed now. So that had a huge negative impact on me. But fast forward to age 11, I had something very profound happen, which I had a teacher who had a huge impact on my life and really showed me that I was very talented in a number of areas, especially public speaking, storytelling, all those kind of things. And I was a very, very bright child. So he showed me that I don't have to be defined by my upbringing. I don't have to be defined by the situation that I grew up in. He inspired me to want to kind of write my own journey. And in doing so, he also created this weird feeling inside me that I'd never felt before called hope. It was incredible. And that moment that I felt that, 2 things happened. 1, I was determined that I was going on a different path from what I should be going on. And 2, I wanted everybody else to experience that feeling as well. The feeling that they know they can impact the world, that they know that even though they feel like a complete and utter outsider, even though some things that should be normal for them according to society may be difficult for them, but it doesn't mean that, like reading and writing, but it doesn't mean that they're any less than anyone else, that they can actually have success. So I went through college not really knowing what I wanted to do, just knowing I wanted to impact people. Studied electronics and computer and software engineering because huge fan of like James Bond and Batman and every other gadget-driven superhero. So I thought, I want to be the one that makes all the gadgets for them. Then discovered they're actually not real. Those people don't exist. So I got into electronics engineering and very quickly realized that my passion wasn't that. My passion is people. And when you take psychology and understanding how the brain works, you combine that with technology. The kind of one of the many intersections of that is marketing, particularly digital marketing. And that's where I ended up heading through a very varied career, and got some very early recognition on that, and just kind of took it from there. And then I got in and out of entrepreneurship, and every now and then went back to corporate life, and then realized, what the hell am I doing? Got back into entrepreneurship, just kind of a crazy journey from there.
Wow. So was there a pivotal moment that was, or I should say a defining moment that says, I'm going to be a coach?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think so. I come off the back of selling one of my largest startups. So this was a high growth tech company. I started with a friend of mine. We co-founded, we brought on board some other co-founders, had 3.5 years of extreme stress and anxiety. But from the end of that, we managed to sell that for multi-8 figures, which was amazing. So coming off the back of that, I was like, right, I need that thing called a real job. Like I need something to pay the bills, because while we're going through the acquisition, you can't buy groceries with shares. It's kind of this weird thing. The supermarkets frown on you if you say, I'll give you 0.0001 of a share if you give me my groceries. So I ended up getting a job at Cigna Insurance, became the chief marketing officer there, and was there for 5 years. And on paper, like, honestly, Robert, it was the dream job. Like, on paper, everything there was exactly what every marketer would want. I'm the chief marketing officer at a Fortune 100 company. The pay was ludicrous. The bonuses, crazy. I got to travel the world speaking on stages everywhere. That's where I got recognized by Adobe when I was there. Also, published my first book when I was there. All of these things were happening that would make this job incredible, but I was miserable. And I remember sitting in my office literally writing that list of all the reasons why I should love my job, because I actually felt really ashamed of the fact that I had this job that most people would kill for, and I didn't want it. And I thought something must be wrong with me. So had to analyze that. And when I finally got to the bottom of it, I realized it's really simple. I'm not fulfilled. And the reason I'm unfulfilled there was because I'm born to help people. That's just how I'm wired. I love that selfish feeling of that selfish fulfilled feeling of somebody else getting breakthrough because of how you've helped them. It's just something I really enjoy.
Yeah.
And I wasn't getting any of that in a C-suite job. In a C-suite job, you're only dealing with numbers, data. In fact, people aren't even people to you. They're just numbers and data, according to most of the larger corporates. So I made the easiest hard decision of my life. Talked with my wife, came home one day, and she just said, "You're not happy there, are you? No. Do we need to make a change?" Yep. And I left there. And I thought I was going to leave to become a full-time author because I knew I just wanted to impact other people. So I started interviewing others and things like that so I could research for one of my books. And while I did that, the world turned upside down and COVID kind of impacted everywhere. And these businesses that I was interviewing for my book suddenly couldn't really help me much because they were freaking out about their own income and their own jobs and things like that. And they were like, I just don't know how to do this in a lockdown. So I couldn't stand by and let that happen. So I thought, look, I'll just give you my help. Let's do this, and helped a number of them thrive, even during lockdown, which was awesome. And suddenly realized, I think this might be what I'm called to do. So it kind of transitioned into coaching. It kind of came from there, really.
That makes a lot of sense. It's funny because when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I started off as a career coach, life coach, and then, you go through this path. And I found that you don't pick your niche. Your niche picks you. And that just seems how it worked. And it sounds like a similar situation of what you went through, Vince.
Oh, definitely. And this is the kind of the beauty of this. When you understand that, you can go with that, because sometimes you fight that. That's the thing. You go, I want to go in this direction, but actually it's pulling me in another direction. When you learn to just go with that, go with the ebbs and flows, you get to have so much fun. Like, genuinely, I love my job. I just get to do all the cool things in the world. Basically, one of my jobs is literally talking to amazing people around the world. It's as simple as that. And it's one of the most fulfilling things ever. We do a lot of work publishing entrepreneurs. So we have a publishing company. We help them to publish their books. We don't do audio books, hence why I love working with you, Robert. But we help them to write their books. And one of the key things there is we've discovered accidentally that one of our niches was neurodivergent entrepreneurs. And that's because with ADHD, I've discovered that other people with ADHD find it difficult to write books as well. And people with dyslexia find it even more difficult. So being able to facilitate and help them to be able to create like systems and structures to be able to bring their books to life, I'll be honest, man, it's one of the coolest things ever. Like, I think I may have shared with you, Robert, but we had one of our clients, a big African-American military guy, well, ex-military now, he's retired. But he's got a young family, about 1 billion kids, because honestly, every time he has a kid, it turns out to be twins. He's just got this growing family. But his story is incredible. Like, he has severe dyslexia, or still does have severe dyslexia. But as a child, especially growing up as an African-American in the US, the school system completely, utterly failed him. And he was in and out of juvie, and he was just going down a path that was not going to lead to, certainly not lead to any kind of longevity, that's for sure. And he fell in love, and long story short, he cleaned his life up and decided he wanted to make something of himself. So he had been following a lot of the stuff that we had done for years, and really wanted to work with me and convince me, like, kept hounding me to actually help him write a book. And we were like, yeah, of course we'll do this, man. The moment he finished his book, I jumped on a call with him. We're on Zoom, and he's got that packet from Amazon, with his proof copy in there and everything. And he's like, oh, it's arrived. We're both buzzing. It's like, oh, this is going to be awesome. He rips open the envelope, like tore it like it was just nothing, pulls out the book and goes blank. And I immediately thought, oh no, like the rejection sensitivity of me just went, oh, he hates the book. Like he doesn't like the way it looks. Oh no, this is a disaster. What's going on here? And then he just looked straight at me and started crying. And
Oh,
I didn't realize how much it meant to him to actually write that book. And the fact that he'd been told he'd never be able to do anything like that his entire life. And now he's done it. And I kept professional and held it together and was like, yeah, no, I bawled my eyes out, man. I ugly cried on this call with him. We both shared this moment. And it's still to this day, it's one of the most fulfilling things, being able to show people that never thought they could accomplish something that they can accomplish this. It's an incredible feeling.
absolutely. No, that's a beautiful story. You're listening to the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. I'm your host, Robert A. Lane. My very special guest is Vince Warnock. He is a neuromarketing coach, a best-selling author. We're going to talk about neuromarketing after we take a quick break. We are streaming live on the Bold Brave TV network. My friends, don't go away.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense Radio Show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
All right. Welcome back to the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. I'm your host, Robert A. Lane. Our very special guest we have for you today, it's Vince Warnock. He is a neuromarketing coach, a best-selling author. Just shared an incredible story, which almost brings me to tears to hear these stories. But you know what? It's so true. It's so true. And I understand about when you were saying, that you're wired to help people. I get it. As an audiobook coach and producer, I hear this stuff all the time. But when I do the final output, that's where I really get to listen to because when you're editing, when you're you're focused on one thing. But when you get to hear the author, as I'm doing the final output of a chapter, and really hear them tell their story, and I get sucked in. I mean, I am so engaged into what they are saying. I look at that, it's not a testament of my coaching, it's a testament of their ability, proving to themselves that they can do this. You can narrate your own audiobook. You can write a book. You can do these things. And that is the reward. That is totally the reward. So I totally get it. And thank you for sharing that story.
It's so powerful, man. And this is the thing, when you and I first connected, I mean, immediately, like recognizes like, and it's like, okay, you're somebody obviously who loves helping other people as well. Yeah. Everyone seems to think that this is, selfless of us. They're like, oh, you help all these people. You're amazing. No, it's completely selfish. Honestly, the satisfaction we get from this is just unbelievable. It fuels what we do. So yeah, I love this.
Yeah, totally. All right, so we're going to dive into neuromarketing, and I know you're a neuromarketing coach. Some people may not even understand what neuromarketing is, so let's get down to the basics. What is neuromarketing, and how do you apply this concept to your coaching?
Oh my goodness. Warning, I could talk about this for hours. So basically, in a nutshell, neuromarketing is just understanding your prospective client's brain. That's all it is. It's actually connecting with their brain, because a lot of, like, if we look at how the brain's structured, like, there are many different areas of your brain that perform different functions. And it's really difficult to explain that to people, because sometimes those functions change depending, like, one part of the brain will do one thing, but then it'll switch to another thing under different circumstances. Oh, it gets confusing. So neuromarketing, we just boiled it down to 3 core areas of your brain, and these are all around the decision process. So something that's obviously really important to coaches, to authors. If you want to connect with your audience, these are the core areas. One of those is the reptilian brain, and it's a silly name for it, but it's basically the defensive brain. So it's the part of the brain in the brainstem that helps to remind you to breathe, remind you how to walk and eat and all the kind of things that keep us alive. But it's also the part of the brain that's hyper alert, and it's constantly looking for threats. Like, this is an anthropological, can never say that word, kind of condition in our brain where we're always looking for things that are trying to take our life. But it also means it's always sensitive to things that are out of order. So this is the part of the brain where it doesn't really make a decision for you, but it'll opt out of a decision. So if you're looking at, if a potential client's looking at buying a coaching package from you, for example, or going, hey, I want to buy this from you. It's a large amount of money, but I need to process this information. The reptilian brain's job in that is to go, is there anything that's sus here? Is there anything we should be worried about? And if it detects anything that's out of order, like if you're using dodgy marketing tactics or anything like that, that's the part of the brain that goes, alert, I don't know what this is, but we call it our gut. My gut's saying, don't go down this path, and it'll opt out of it. So in marketing, we deal with that really easily, right? Most people, even just standard marketers, not even neuromarketers, will deal with that with things like testimonials, trust badges, social proof, all those kind of things. So that's a very simple part of the brain. Then you've got the other 2 parts of the brain, the neocortex, which is the logical part of the brain, and the limbic system, which is the emotional part of the brain. And where most marketers get it wrong and most entrepreneurs get it wrong is they focus on the neocortex. What I mean by that is they go, okay, here's my product. Here's the price. Here's the benefit. Here's the features. This is why this is good for you. And it details all these things to convince you to make this purchase. But here's the problem with that. If you don't generally, if it's a big product, for example, or a high ticket item, you don't make that decision in the neocortex. You make that decision in the emotional part of the brain. You make it in the limbic system, and you justify it with the neocortex. So if you ask anyone why they signed with you, why they bought your package, why they do whatever, they'll look at that and go, well, here's all the logical reasons. But what they don't understand is there's a deeper part of them that connected with your product, your offering, your service, and that's why they bought from you. So neuromarketing is about understanding that and tapping into that emotional brain. There's so many different ways we can do that.
Wow, that's I'm trying to process everything as you're explaining, but it makes a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense, it also makes sense how the reptilian part of your brain is always looking to protect you from doing something that maybe you're not sure of. So when an entrepreneur, let's say a coach, is presenting their product to a potential client, what would be maybe a 1 or 2 techniques that can help them close the deal without being salesy?
Yeah, very important point. Look, I'll give you kind of 3 layers to this. There's a standard marketing way, which is benefits and features. But that, as you said, comes across salesy, and it doesn't really connect with who they are. Then there is a standard kind of advanced marketing way. So good marketers will understand that they need to tap into that emotional brain. So they use things called cognitive biases or cognitive biases. So these are little techniques that take you out of the logical into the emotional. So for example, if your potential client's looking at your landing page and they're going, oh, wow, there's a lot of information here, and they're trying to process that information, we want to pull them away from that and into something that gets their emotional brain reacting. So a good example of this is urgency. Right? You'll see a lot of people use things on their landing page like, hey, hurry up, you've only got 1 hour to make a decision, otherwise the price goes up. And then you kind of suddenly go, and you make this impulsive decision rather than stick to the logical there. And sometimes that doesn't even make any sense. It just creates this trigger in our brain. So for example, if you're looking at a page and it says you've got an hour left to make a decision, you kind of freak out and want to make the decision now. But in actual fact, it's not going to take you an hour to go through all that information and process it. So it just pulls you in that emotional direction. We also use scarcity. This is a very powerful tool. This is the kind of thing where you're like, hey, there's only 3 spots left. Don't miss out. Those kind of things create a sense of emotion in people, take them out of that logical brain into the emotional limbic system, and it'll encourage them to make that decision. Now, one thing of warning around that, like using cognitive bias, very powerful way of connecting with your audience, also very easy way to manipulate people. And I'm a huge advocate on having a duty of care around your messaging. So we all know as marketers, we have a duty of care around privacy and data and all these kind of things. But we also have a duty of care to make sure that we're not misleading people. And one of the worst things I ever see, and you see this all the time, is like, you've only got 24 hours left on this deal. And you go back 24 hours later and it says, you've only got 24 hours left on this deal. And you realize that you're being duped here. And that's when the reptilian brain takes over and says, I totally don't trust this at all. So, so you got to be very cautious how you use it, be very authentic, be very open with it, and be very kind of ethical as well. But then there's an advanced technique. And this is where neuromarketers kick in and really understand how to connect with people. Because what we don't realize is those techniques that we're talking about to take you into the emotional brain, they're great. And they'll help someone make a kind of a decision. But really, you want to connect deeper with that. And to do that, we have what we call needs-based marketing. And I don't mean need like I have a need for a pencil, I want to go out and buy a pencil. But what I mean is, what are the psychological needs in our emotional brain that we have as human beings? And a good example of this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a great model. Basically, Maslow hypothesized that we all have these layers of needs within our life. These are the things that as human beings are fundamental to us. So the base layer is really simple. That is your safety needs. It's things like we need shelter, we need food, we need air. You've got to be able to breathe. You've got to have water, all those kind of things. Then above that is 2 layers, which are your psychological needs. And that's where we focus as neuromarketers. One of those is called a sense of community, a sense of belonging. And if you are inexperienced as a marketer, you can make the mistake of thinking that just means I need to create a Facebook group. It definitely does not mean that. What it means is your product you're offering, your service, has to say something about them when they purchase it. Like, it has to be tied to their sense of identity. If they can feel like they belong to something when they belong to you or when they buy off of you, then you're creating a deeper connection with them that goes far beyond anything that's transactional. And then above that is an even more powerful layer, which is called esteem. And that is, so we all have a need to belong as human beings. That's built into us since, old times. Because if, you're in a tribe and you're suddenly isolated, you don't belong somewhere, you were going to die. That's just how life worked. So you want to be part of a community that can protect each other. But within that community, you need esteem. You need to know that you are going to be adding additional value to that. In other words, you're contributing to that community and you feel like you're elevated in there. And that comes from the fact that if you were the weakest in your tribe, there was a chance you were going to be, banned or sent out into the wilderness. And guess what happened then? You would die. So it's built into us, these psychological needs. So if you can tap into that sense of belonging and that sense of esteem, then you can create really powerful messaging. And I'll give you a good example of this. I am a huge whiskey fan, Robert. Like, I love a good scotch. Like, honestly, if I could replace water and drink scotch, very unhealthy. Don't get to do that. It's not my recommendation to anyone. I just love the taste of it. So a number of years back, I saw a Kickstarter for a hip flask, right? And this is a special hip flask set. There were 2 of them that is for whiskey lovers. So this hip flask is made of really strong tempered glass. So that means that it's very easy to sterilize this. So if I'm changing from one whiskey to another, you don't get any kind of contamination across there. So if I want to change from a 28-year-old Glendronach to a 25-year-old Macallan, I can do that without anything really interrupting that flavor. So that's really powerful. Also, the way it's shaped like a hip flask and it's got the curve. You can actually literally drop it on concrete and it won't shatter, which is amazing. But they put a rubber membrane around it so that it's even stronger still. That rubber membrane has a see-through slot in it, so you can actually see how much whiskey is in that hip flask, which, by the way, is genius. I don't know why all hip flasks don't do that. So it's really, really powerful. And it comes with a special lid and a special cork that you can replace to help with the aroma and things like that. So as soon as I saw those benefits, I'm like, that's it. I'm buying this thing. Done. I bought 2 of them. Now, here's the problem. None of that actually matters at all. And what I mean by that is, I've never used a hip flask. Well, at the point, I'd never used a hip flask in my life. Had no intention of using a hip flask either. In fact, since we bought it, which is many years ago, I've used it twice, I think. Once when we went on a little river cruise, and I just had to have something to take some whiskey. I didn't want to take a whole bottle of whiskey with me. And then once when we went on a trip up to Auckland with my wife, and I had some really nice whiskey I wanted to take, and I didn't want to take the whole bottle. That's it, twice in all those years. You see, the reason I bought that sounds like all those logical things that I gave to you, all that neocortex area of these are the benefits and these are the amazing things that make those hip flasks so good. But the real reason I bought that was because of what it says about me. Because the moment I tell that story to people, I tell them about that hip flask, two things happen. One is they go, oh, Vince is a whiskey lover. That is part of my identity. And that speaks to my identity. So the moment people hear that, they see me as who I see myself as. So that's really powerful for me. It connects me with my tribe, which is whiskey lovers and things like that. But it goes beyond that into that esteem layer, because when I tell people all those, like when I was explaining that to you, if you don't understand much about whiskey, you'll be thinking, wow, I didn't even know any of this was a thing. Like I didn't know that it could contaminate the taste of the whiskey. I didn't know that whiskey, hip flasks don't have see-through things on them. Like, all of these things mean people go, wow, he must know quite a lot about whiskey. Which, by the way, spoiler alert, I don't. I just really like whiskey, so I'll drink any whiskey. I've had some terrible Canadian whiskey. Sorry, Canadians, some of your whiskey is rubbish, but also some terrible New Zealand whiskey. But what I'm trying to say here is that all of those things I said make people see me as though I'm more of an expert than I really am. So that speaks to that esteem and my sense of identity. So it's a really powerful way. If you can tap into who your audience is, you understand what's important to them, you understand like how your brand can tie into that sense of identity, then all of a sudden it's huge. Like we do this with our publishing company, because there are thousands and thousands of publishing companies around the world. And by the way, most of them are amazing. There are a couple of dodgy ones, unfortunately, they're getting called out on that. But in general, most publishing companies are amazing. So how do we stand out in that community? Well, we tap into who we are, our sense of identity, which taps into theirs. And I explained before, we work with neurodivergent entrepreneurs. We work with people with dyslexia and ADHD. As a result, we've even gone one step further. We've created the ADHD publishing standards. So it's a way of formatting your book to make it easier for people with ADHD and with dyslexia as well to be able to read the books. And it still looks incredibly professional and something you can be really, really proud of. But because we talk about that and because we help people with ADHD and dyslexia, they feel like they're part of our community there. Yeah. We get them because we see them as who they are. We see them as these neurodivergent, awesome entrepreneurs, and we help them to produce this thing that they really want. So then they can feel like they're part of that. And of course, when they publish their book, they always feel esteemed because it's like, well, I did this. I've got a best-selling book. It's freaking amazing. So now we just got to send them to you and convince them to do the audiobook version. That'll be even better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, we're going to take another quick break. You are listening to the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. My very special guest is Vince Warnock, who is a neuro-marketing coach, which just really shed a lot of light on what that is about. Great stuff. We're going to talk about your books when we come back. You have a few books, and they all sound fascinating. I want to get more information about that. I want people to hear about your book, so we're going to do that. When we come back, we are streaming live on the Bold Brave TV network. Don't go away, my friends.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com. or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
All right. Welcome back to the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. I'm your host, Robert A. Lane. And not only do we talk about the audiobook world, but we have great guests, authors, book professionals, coaches, like my very special guest today. And our guest is, of course, Vince Warnock. We're just talking about neuromarketing. It's a fascinating concept and subject. And it's such a great thing to wrap your head around, that can really help not only authors and their author brand, but entrepreneurs in general. Now, Vince, you've written several books, and you're a best-selling author, which is awesome. You have a book. You have Irresistible Emails, Mindful Marketing, Chat GPT for marketers, Chasing the Insights. And there was another one, 5-word affirmations, a guide to leveling up your entrepreneurial, if I could say that word, entrepreneurial mind game. These are all fantastic books. I mean, I don't even know where to start because I'd love to hear details about each one. So I guess let's start with Mindful Marketing.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those books that, being a neuromarketing expert and being recognized for that, you would think I would have many books out there about neuromarketing, but I really didn't. And I was going back, when did I? Oh man, I've lost all track of time and space, Robert. I even don't know when I published half these things. I think it was last year. Anyway, beginning of last year. Oh, Christmas. So not Christmas just gone, Christmas before. Just before that, one of my clients was like, look, I really want to learn more about cognitive bias. And I'm like, well, not a problem. I'll put together some notes for you. But one of the key things I said to them is I'm going to teach you how to use it for your marketing, but also how to make sure that you don't use it inappropriately, so use it ethically. So I just started putting together some notes, and my wife and I went to between Melbourne and Adelaide, and it's like a 12-hour train ride. It's a beautiful train ride if you ever get to do it. So I just sat there compiling these notes and writing up this stuff. And next thing you know, I realized on that train ride, I'd written an entire book. So gave it to my team, put it together, and sent it to my client. Said, there you go. And by the way, you're now in the acknowledgements at the front and the dedication, because it was your curiosity that created this book. And it turns out, just with the book I wrote after that, which is Irresistible Emails, it turns out when you write a book that's for someone to answer a question that they have, then chances are that's going to answer a question that many people have. And that went bestseller very, very quickly, which did surprise me because it was like an afterthought. It wasn't something I had really set out to write. So that was really powerful. And that led to Irresistible Emails, which really was a continuation of that. My client, once they consumed all of that and changed their marketing based on it, they came to me and said, look, how do you apply these neuromarketing principles and these cognitive biases to email marketing? And I said, oh, look, I'll put together some notes for you. And funny enough, that turned into a full book. And again, that went bestseller. So those are my two kind of neuromarketing books. I've actually got two other ones that are written that aren't published just yet. They're coming out this year. One of those is The Art of Neuromarketing, and that's kind of bringing everything together, explaining how neuromarketing works in depth. And the other is all about thought leadership. But they were kind of my benchmark ones there. And then the second category of books I've got is all around ChatGPT and AI. And I've worked in AI for 20 plus years, back long before we've had the breakthroughs around what we call attention mechanisms and transformer models, which is why we've got ChatGPT and DeepSeek and all these things out now. So long before that, we had to manually do a lot of this stuff. But when I left Cigna Insurance, I got a email from Google not long after that, actually saying, hey, we've put together a white paper we think you should read, Vince. And I went, okay, cool. And that was the big breakthroughs that they'd had around large language models. And I'll be honest, I read that paper. It blew my mind. It was just so powerful. But then I turned around and went, what a bunch of jerks. You could have released this a year ago. We would have been able to finish a big project I was on. Like, it would have been amazing. But that led to a shoulder tap from some pretty big name AI platforms that we're about to launch. And they wanted me to come on board to help train out the biases, these machines and these engines and things. So all of a sudden, all of the predictions I had every single year around what's going to be the biggest impact to marketing, AI, finally were true. So now finally I can say, ha, I told you. So I wrote books on it. I wrote ChatGPT for Marketers, which is very dated now. That came out when ChatGPT had just come out. I had early access to all of that, so I got to be able to play around with it and see how it could help entrepreneurs. And then since then, I teamed up with one of my business partners, Nina, and we wrote ChatGPT for consultants and ChatGPT for female entrepreneurs as well. So yeah, those are the kind of books now. I also write children's books. I wrote a book called I'm Not Faulty, and it was basically just what I wanted to hear as a kid. You know, when you grow up feeling like you're an outsider your entire life and feeling like you can't do things the way that other people do, then you feel like you're faulty. So the whole book is for little kids and their parents to have a conversation around it. Just basically saying, look, just because you can't play nicely with your own toys, it doesn't mean you're faulty. Or because you're not good at math, it doesn't mean you're faulty. Or because you can't read or write properly, it doesn't mean you're faulty. So at the end, it brings all of that together. So it's really the book I wanted to read when I was a little kid, Robert.
So your book, 5-Word Affirmations, a guide to leveling up your entrepreneurial mind game. What do you share in there? Do you actually is it a book of affirmations?
Yeah, it is. It's funny enough. This came from me challenging. I was running a group program at the time, and I wanted to challenge the people in there to write a book. And one of the things I said to them was, you know, we're going through this whole program, and I said to them, you really should do this. And they were like, oh, it's too hard. It's too hard. And I said, well, you can write a memoir, you can write a genius book, which is what we recommend people write, or you can write a medium content book. And this is a book that doesn't require too much effort. This is long before AI made it easy for people to do these kind of things.
Yeah.
So I said, I need some topics around that. And while all this is happening in the background, one of those clients was an affirmations coach. So they help people with affirmations. They said, oh, you should do affirmations, Vince. And I was like, I don't have time for that crap. I was like, I'm way too busy to stand in front of the mirror and go, hey, you're awesome. You're amazing. So they challenged me and said, I thought you were the experimentation guy. I thought that you were someone who would try something and then work out, test your hypotheses of whether it's real or not. And I went, okay, touche. So I decided I was going to do an experiment with it. And I said to them, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take it very, very seriously. So I don't joke around with experiments like that. I knew if I was going to do this, I was going to have to study it. I was going to have to learn what was happening in my brain. I was going to have to report on all these kind of things. So I did this. I can tell you now, I'm still doing those daily affirmations for the last 5 years. It's awesome. Been insane. And so anyway, I decided I was going to talk about that little journey. I was going to write a little bit about the brain science behind how affirmations work. And they are really, really powerful, by the way, for any of the other haters out there. Really powerful. And then what I was going to do is, that was like a small portion of the book. How do affirmations work? My little journey about, what I just explained there. And the rest of the book were a bunch of affirmations that I was using. And what I discovered was there are a whole pile of affirmations. I really like the rhythm of 5 words. Sounds really crazy, but I like these short affirmations. And I discovered that a huge portion of the affirmations I was doing were only 5 words long. So we wrote a book of 5-word affirmations that you can literally declare to yourself and train your brain to shift how it thinks.
That's great. Love it. I love it. That's awesome. Now, I know a few years ago you wrote Chasing the Insights, a practical guide to experimental approach in digital marketing. Was that kind of a precursor to the other books that you released after you released this book?
Yeah, Chasing the Insights was my first ever book. I had actually written a book before that, but never finished it, because back when social media first started, you had Facebook launching and all this kind of stuff. I was like, man, this stuff is amazing. I'm going to help everyone. So I wrote a book on social media marketing. The problem is, every time I got about 70 to 80% through writing the book, the entire industry changed. And all the approaches I was putting in there were now outdated. I'm like, I'm never going to keep up with this. So I gave up. And then I had this methodology that I was using called the Chaser method. And this came out of necessity. So I started a startup with a friend of mine, and we had absolutely no money. We had no funding. We knew for 6 months we were going to have no funding. And the goal was, at the end of that 6 months, to raise $1 million worth of seed funding, which we did. But over that 6 months, we were draining our own bank accounts and our own savings to bootstrap this company. So we had to be very particular about where we put our money. So we didn't want to just throw money at anything. I wanted to be very sure that I was measuring everything. So I created a methodology, created this experimentation approach, and we adopted that. And it was a huge success. And I've brought that methodology into everything I do from that point on. Every corporate job, every startup, every coaching thing I do, I bring that methodology in. So I decided I should probably put that down on paper. But here was the funny thing, Robert. So that conference I was talking about where I got recognized by Adobe, he got me up on front of the stage. At that point, I had finished my draft manuscript, right? And I had put it out there in the world that I was publishing a book, and this is what it was about. I wanted to make sure that I had an irreversible action there so that if I didn't chicken out over actually publishing the book and everyone go, oh, what happened to that? So I knew I'd be too embarrassed. So I stated it out there, and CEO of Adobe got me up in front of everyone. He said, oh, I heard you're writing a book, Vince. Now, the name of the book was actually Beakers and Binary, because the idea was Beakers being experimentation, binary being digital, so digital marketing experimentation. And he stood there and he goes, he didn't let me speak much. He just said, look, I know you're writing this book. Oh, it's on experimentation and marketing. Oh, he goes, from what I heard, I can't wait for this book, Vince. I can't remember what it's called. And he goes, oh, that's right. He said, it's all about the chaser method. And he goes, oh, and your quote, we don't chase the wins, we chase the insights. He goes, oh, chasing the insights. That's the name of the book. And that was one of those dolt moments where I'm standing there going, how did I not see that? So when he finished introducing me and I finished my thing, I was quickly on my phone messaging my team going, stop, we're renaming the book. Quick, do the cover design. We want to change it all. Grab the URLs as fast as you can. So it really came out of that. And that was like an incredible accomplishment for someone who never thought they'd be able to read or write properly to be able to publish my first book.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you for sharing insight on all these books. And, for those of you who are watching or listening, grab them on Amazon. They're there. Pick them up. It's good stuff, good reading material. You're going to learn a lot. We got to take one more quick break, and then we'll just kind of wrap things up and let people know how they can get in touch with you when we come back. This is the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. My very special guest is Vince Warnock. I am Robert A. Lane. We will be back. We're streaming live on the Bold Brave TV network.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network. Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com.
Welcome back. This is the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. Thank you so much for joining. Our very special guest today has been Vince Warnock. Boy, I tell you, the stories you've been sharing are fantastic. Your journey of how you got to where you are today, your books, everything is just fascinating. And I do appreciate you talking about all this. Are there plans of having your books turned into audiobooks? We'd love to hear you tell your story. You've got so much great information.
Absolutely, there is. Honestly, it's I've got I think 4 more books, all including children's book for this year, already written. And yeah, funny enough, after talking to you, actually, Robert, thanks, man. You seeded the thought in my brain, and now I can't stop thinking about doing the audiobook version. So yes, we will be doing that, and I will be narrating it myself as well.
Good. Awesome. Love to hear that. Love to hear that. Now, before we wrap things up here, is there one piece of advice you can share to help authors or entrepreneurs level up their game? What would be like one thing that you can share?
I think the one thing is to own your own story. And what I mean by that is so often as entrepreneurs, we play things down and we think that our story is not that powerful, or my story doesn't matter that much, or what I do doesn't matter that much, or my expertise is not that good. There's so many people that are better than me out there. Who cares? I'm telling you now, your story actually genuinely matters. The one thing I've learned through my career is that there are people out there that are legitimately waiting for you to show up and tell your story. They're waiting for you to explain what it is, whatever your area of expertise is, but in a way that reflects who you are. And I learned this from Seth Godin, and talking to Seth about his books versus my books. And he explained to me, look, you can have a book on the same topic. Both of us can. He said, and my book will resonate with certain people. They'll read that and go, this just makes perfect sense to me. I totally get it. But there'll be other people that read that and go, oh, it sounds okay, but I don't really understand it. And then I'll read my book, and because of the stories I share, because of the way I approach that, they'll go, now I finally get it. So there are people out there that are just waiting for you to show up. And the beauty of that is when you show up, you'll show up and make them feel seen. Because, and this is why I love having a podcast, and I know you do as well, Robert, is you get to talk to so many people about their stories, and the amount of people that hear that story and go, oh, I feel like you're telling my story. I feel like that's my life. You totally get me. You understand me. So there are people out there waiting for that. So don't shy back from that. Don't hold back from that. Get out there and be confident. It's not about you. I know we can all be, I get it as well. I get really insecure. Imposter syndrome screams at me. But the fact is, I don't show up for me. I show up for other people. So do that yourself. Tell your stories, write your books, do your audio books, turn up on those lives, those webinars, those summits, whatever it is for you. Put yourself out there and be bold.
I'd love it. That is a great piece of advice. And then, I tell the authors that I work with when they do their audiobooks is be your true, authentic self, because that is the one thing that allows you to stand out in the crowd. And like you say, some people will resonate with you, some people won't, but that's okay because you're attracting the right people to hear your story. Beautiful piece of advice. So Vince, how do people get in touch with you? And the other thing I wanted to check with you now, do you have clients just only in your country, or are you worldwide? Do you help people all over the world?
I can tell you now, I have very few clients in my own country. So most of my clients, most of my clients are in the US and Canada.
Awesome. Okay.
Just because it's just a bigger market, obviously. And also I have the advantage of having it's going to sound random, a mutated gene. I have a mutated ADRB1 gene, which means that I only sleep 4 hours a night. So early mornings, even though it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, it's perfect time to be able to talk with clients around the world. So it works really well. And also I make it really hard for anyone to find me. No, I'm joking. I make it really easy. All you need to do is actually go to chasingtheinsights.com. You're going to see links to the Business Mind magazine. You'll see links to the podcast. You'll see my books and everything on there. But you'll also see links to where you can connect with me on social media or book some time with me. And if you are serious about writing a book and you've been kind of dilly-dallying on that and going, oh, I don't know if I've really got what it takes to be an author, I'm telling you now, you totally got what it takes. Contact me. Let's have a chat about it. Or if you need help with the neuro-marketing, honestly, there's an incredible sense of satisfaction when you connect with your audience on that deep level and they go from being a prospect to being a fan. It's pretty awesome.
That is great. Again, so that's chasingtheinsights.com, correct?
That's the one. Yep.
All right. Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Vince. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today. I have one assignment that I give after every podcast, every live that I do. And I'm going to give this assignment to you as well, Vince. This is for everybody, by the way. This is for everybody. When you're out and about in the world, my friends, just smile at a stranger, say hello to them, give them a compliment, because that 5 or 10 seconds of time that it takes you to do that can make the world of difference in somebody's life because you don't know what they're going through. So be a life changer. There it is. That's
I
my
love it.
advice.
I not only accept that challenge, I will run with that challenge and I will spread that challenge everywhere, man. I love that.
Awesome. I love it too. Again, Vince, thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you on the show. Again, my very special guest, Vince Warnock, who is a neuromarketing coach, who is also a best-selling author. Go to his website, chasingtheinsights.com, and grab one or two or all of his books. You're going to be learning a lot of things, and you'll also be very entertained. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. I'm Robert A. Lane. Appreciate you hanging out. We'll be back, of course, next Thursday with another show, or I guess I should say Friday for you there, Vince. But would love to have you again join us for another episode of the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. We're streaming live on the Bold Brave TV network. Thank you so much for tuning in, my friends. Take care.
This has been Your Book, Your Voice with host Robert A. Lane. Tune in each week for another powerful and informative episode of Your Book, Your Voice, Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.